Welcome to Millennium TV 24. I am Kim Seabrook. And in today's news, of course, I want to start up with New York. In New York, it may soon bar the shackling of children in family court after nearly a decade of advocacy by Kramer's organization and others. A growing national consensus that courts should eliminate the use of hardware restraints on youth during hearings. New York State is posed to ban the practice. By Thursday, both houses of the Democrat-led state legislature have passed a bill that adds a new section to the Family Court Act, prohibiting the use of handcuffs, chains, shackles, irons, straitjackets, and other restraints on those 21 and younger appearing in family court. Governor Andrew Cuomo will have until the end of the year to sign or veto the legislation. If enacted, it would immediately apply to children entering a family courtroom for any type of hearing, including delinquency, foster care, or custody and visitation. There will be limited exceptions to the prohibition on shackles, but judges would have to rule on the record as to whether a child appearing unshackled in court poses an unreasonable risk to safety or order in the court. And the child would be given an opportunity to be heard on the matter. That's awesome. The right to appear unshackled is currently applied even to adult murder defendants. Bronx State Senator Jamal Bailey described his bill as a common sense piece of legislation. Bailey, the lead sponsor on several juvenile justice reform measures moving through the legislature as the session concludes this week, said shackling and restraining young people does not reduce negative behavior. It's such a barbaric and disrespectful manner, it's not a mean for that end. The Office of Court Administration, which oversees the court system statewide, recommended the bill to the legislature. An accompanying legislative memo cited child psychologists' findings that shackling is so damaging to a child's developing sense of self that it may well push him or her into further criminality. Dennis Quirk, the president of the New York State Court Officers Association, said he was unfamiliar with the details of the pending legislation. He described the shackling of youth as rare but sometimes necessary, stating it provides protection for the individual, court officer, judge, attorneys, and all other people in attendance. He also said judges already had the authority to decide when a young person gets shackled under the state's Office of Court Administration rules. Despite the continued use of shackles on children, there is a growing agreement that the practice is deeply flawed. The Office of Court Administration has asked the state legislature to formally bar the practice for the past 4 sessions. The bill never made it out of committee until Democrats took over the state house, and that was in 2019. Its earlier sponsor was Brooklyn Democrat Velma Nett Montgomery, a longtime champion of juvenile justice reform. But the bill failed to pass both houses before her retirement at the end of her last session. Senator Bailey said he picked up the bill at the request of Montgomery, his mentor, and he described it as a recognition that we have to do what's right for our children. Arresting kids who are 7 years old does not protect them from a negative future, he said. You are scarring them for life. That's really deep. Yes, and I agree. I think children at a certain age should not be shackled. No children, but I guess depending on the circumstances, if they're violent, etc., etc. But shackling a child is a little bit, extensive. So let's go. Next, we have the Bronx DA giving okay to dismiss more than 6,000 misdemeanor marijuana cases. The Bronx District Attorney has been given the approval to dismiss over 6,000 misdemeanor marijuana cases, some dating back to the 1980s. Bronx DA Darcel Clark said that this is a step in bringing fairness to the criminal justice system, adding she hopes it will make a difference in the lives of a lot of people in the Bronx. Of the 6,089 misdemeanor cases dismissed for possession or sale of marijuana, 2441 were summonses and 1,1998 were pending cases. 1974 were open warrants and 1650 were sentences have not been completed. Clark said the dismissal of these cases will help people who were disproportionately affected by enforcement and arrests like communities of color. saying they would no longer be targets and can avoid collateral consequences. Yes, give it up. It'll be expunged off their records, so now when they apply for jobs, they don't have to say that they have criminal convictions. When they apply for work, apartments, immigration, all of these consequences come with having criminal convictions, said Clark. The judge said the court has up to 90 days to dismiss and seal each one of these cases. I think this is good news for today. Only reason why I say this is good news because weed is legal now in the state of New York, right? So it makes sense to not have anybody have charges, and the state is allowed to sell marijuana legally. And yeah, let's just move on. But Black adults least vaccinated among New Yorkers despite months of vaccination campaigns to target vulnerable communities. Data shows that Black and brown New Yorkers are still not getting vaccinated, yes, as much as the rest of the community. Pop-up vaccination sites have been set up in communities of color throughout the city to get more Black and brown people vaccinated. But still, according to the city data, less than 25% of Black New Yorkers in the Bronx and Brooklyn are fully vaccinated. City data shows that Black and Latino communities have suffered the most from COVID-19. I think we suffer the most as far as financially and maybe emotionally and mentally. Some local organizations say it's a barrier to access, which is why local governments in New York health and hospitals have targeted efforts toward the groups through campaigns and easy accessible vaccine sites like train stations and Yankee Stadium. The CDC reported less than a quarter of Black Americans nationwide received their first COVID-19 shot. In the Bronx, 38% of white people and 45% of Asian and Pacific Islander adults received their vaccine. But Black adults are still the lowest vaccinated racial group in all of New York City, while white and Asian adults are showing the highest vaccination rates. Community groups in the Bronx say that the problem is a mistrust of the government that goes far beyond COVID-19. A lot of the times when you go to a hospital in the Black community, what tends to happen is that the treatment is not the same as in other communities. So I think that that's where the mistrust also occurs. You hear about things that are happening in poor communities, and that's allowed to happen to you. You don't have trust in the government when it comes to minorities. And that was quoted by Julie Spitzer of BronxWorks. That mistrust has a long history. Spitzer shared that when she speaks to members of the Black community who are skeptical of the vaccine, they often bring up the Tuskegee experiment. And that experiment was a racist study conducted by the CDC in the 1930s that used Black men as test subjects to study syphilis without their consent. Spitzer says that the bettering the relationship between Black and brown communities and the healthcare system may just take time. That was good news for me. And next we have 178 healthcare workers suspended from Houston Methodist. So I definitely wanted to follow up with this story because in Houston, there's a group of nurses who are not willing to take the COVID vaccination. And I specifically heard someone say they need to just have some more information on it. They need to feel secure in actually taking this vaccine and not be forced just because the job tells them to do so. So moving forward, let's go. And the hospital system, they're refusing the COVID-19 vaccination. Scores of workers at a Houston hospital system have been suspended and face being fired for refusing the vaccine. A controversial company mandates that has drawn protests and an outcry from those facing termination. Houston Methodist CEO Mark Boom said the 178 workers represent less than 1% of almost 25,000 employees. We are nearly 100% compliant with our COVID-19 vaccine mandate. Boom said in an email to staff Tuesday, Houston Methodist is officially the first hospital system in the country to achieve this goal for the benefit of its patients. Boom said that 27 of the 178 suspended workers have received one dose of vaccine and that he is hopefully they will get their second dose. All are suspended for 2 weeks and are set to be fired if they fail to be fully vaccinated. I wish the number could be zero, but unfortunately a small number of individuals have decided not to put their patients first, Boom said. Anyway, first in line, still no shot. Surprising number of hospital workers refuse vaccines. An additional 285 employees received a medical or religious exemption, and 332 were granted deferrals for pregnancy and other reasons, Boom said. I feel betrayed a little bit, Amanda Rivera told us. As she left the building Monday, I worked in the ER. It was crazy during the pandemic. We were short-staffed. The hospital was over capacity with patients. It was just a lot. So now for them to come and do this is like a slap in the face. Hospital workers across the nation risked their lives during the pandemic, and many died of the virus. Yet, a recent study showed us that some of the largest hospital networks and public hospitals in the country reveal staff vaccination rates vary widely from 51% to 91%. Last week, Indiana University announced that it would require its 36,000 employees to be vaccinated by September, calling the mandate a safe and effective way to protect patients and protect the community. Requiring vaccinations for healthcare employees is not new or unprecedented, IU Health said in a statement. However, hundreds of colleges and universities are also requiring vaccinations for them coming to school in the new year. Many nursing homes hotspots early in the pandemic also are requiring inoculation from the coronavirus. A Houston Methodist controversy foreshadows the coming months, said Omenka, and that's an associate professor and public health specialist at Butler University in Indianapolis. And mandates that may seem like the obvious choice to many people must be implemented with a human context. And he told us that as business and schools return to full operations, they have to decide what to do about the vaccination policy. He stated it's not going to be an easy process. Mandatory vaccination is not popular with lawmakers in Texas. Governor Greg Abbott signed a law Monday denying state contracts to businesses that require customers to be vaccinated. Vaccine passports also are prohibited. Texas is open 100%, and we want to make sure you have the freedom to go where you want without limits, Abbott said. An Equal Employment Opportunity Commission has issued guidance saying employers have the right to require the COVID-19 vaccine, citing a direct threat to others in the workplace. Still, more than 100 Houston Methodist employees filed suit against the hospital system last month, saying that the vaccines are experimental and that the mandatory vaccine policy is unfair. The suit notes that the vaccine have emergency use authorization from the FDA, but have not yet won full approval. I cried the whole way out, Jennifer Bridges, a nurse involved in the lawsuit, told us as she left the hospital Monday. Boom said that the science, along with the data from 300 million doses already distributed in the U.S. alone, proves that the vaccines are safe and necessary if we are going to turn the corner against COVID-19. The number of positive cases and hospitalizations continue to drop across the nation, and they continue to decline, he said, proving that the vaccine is effective. Boom also stated that the mandate has been challenged by the media and some outspoken employees. But he says several other major healthcare centers have followed Houston Methodist lead. As the first hospital system to mandate COVID-19 vaccines, we were prepared for this. The criticism is sometimes the price we pay for leading medicine. I give it up to them nurses. Again, I think people have a right to do what they want with their own body without being forced, regardless of the situation. Let's see what's going on next. Actually, you know what? What I think I'm gonna do is go into a commercial break. My name is Kim Seabrook. We are on Millennium TV 24. Let's go into a break and I'll be right back with the next story.
Millennium TV, bridging communities worldwide. We broadcast diverse international content from Europe, Asia, Africa, and now right here in the USA. Watch us via Roku on your smart TV. Submit your own content to 1530entertainmentllc@gmail.com. Download the Millennium TV app from the App Store to stream our shows anywhere, anytime. Millennium TV.
Welcome back to Millennium TV 24. Again, I'm Kim Seabrook, And in our next story, we talk about food allergies and how they complicate hungry Americans as they search for meals. So when Emily Brown, a Kansas City mother, couldn't find foods that her 2-year-old with multiple food allergies could eat at a local food pantry, she mustered up the courage to ask about gluten-free foods or dairy alternatives. The response was, "You got something." The only things her daughter could eat were potatoes and salsa. "It took really all of my strength to make it to that car," she said. "I cried in the car, and then I just thought to myself, we cannot be the only family. I cannot be the only mother struggling with this situation." For the millions of Americans newly experiencing food insecurity during the pandemic, a particular crisis is hitting those with food allergies and intolerances. Most charitable and government food programs offer limited options. While some pantries maintain gluten-free shelves or post allergen information, most were forced to limit clients' choices last year, instead turning to contactless models where clients drive up and take a pre-made bag of food. "Everybody deserves an equal opportunity to select their own food," said Carla Carter, Director in Outreach and Programming at the National Celiac Association. "But," she said, "COVID drastically changed that into, here's a box of food, good luck." Those signing up for government assistance face similar problems. But the problem for women, infants, and children, which is known as WIC, offers a substitute for peanut butter. It's beans, not exactly useful for making sandwiches. Soy milk is a substitute for cow's milk, but some people, like Brown's child, can't have either. So, food stamps or SNAP lets families choose what to buy, but specialized foods like gluten-free bread or sunflower seed butter are often far more expensive. In some stores, the latter costs triple the cost of store-brand peanut butter. Gluten-free flour costs 4 times a standard bag, and even the cheapest dairy milk alternatives are often double the price. And yes, I can definitely relate because I am a vegan and I don't eat a lot of the things that are just given to us when we are in need. So next, Feeding America, the nation's largest anti-hunger organization, hasn't gathered data on the overlap between hunger and food allergies or intolerance. But it's likely millions of Americans who are food insecure face some limits on what they can eat. An estimated 32 million people have a food allergy. 85 million people live in a household where someone has a food allergy or intolerance, and that's according to the Allergy Research and Education, which advocates for people with allergies. About 1% of people are diagnosed with celiac disease, and that means that they can't consume gluten, and about 6% of people have a non-celiac gluten sensitivity, Carter said. 8 years after her food pantry experience, Brown is now one of the few people running a program that's dedicated to helping people with allergies and intolerance access safe foods. So I think that is pretty awesome. She found a problem and then she made a solution. Salute to Ms. Brown. I appreciate the story. But just like I also stated recently and opposed to my peers, that when you guys are distributing food out to the poor and the people who are hungry, don't give them the stuff that you wouldn't eat. Be considerate. There's a lot of diseases and infections going on and things that if you're going to help someone with the proper nutrition, not just, here you go, here's a plate of food. And especially if it's something you don't eat. I definitely make that loud and clear. So let's move on. But anyway, millions in the U.S. struggle through life with few to trust. Karen Glidden's loneliness became unbearable during the coronavirus pandemic. The 72-year-old widow who suffers from vision loss and diabetes lives far from any relatives, barely left her house in Champion, Michigan this past year for fear of contracting the virus. Finally vaccinated, she was looking forward to venturing out, but her beloved service dog died last month. It doesn't help that her circle of trusted friends has dwindled to one neighbor she counts on to help her shop, get to the doctor, and hang out. I feel like I'm in prison most of the time, and once in a while I get to go out, said Glidden, whose adult children live in California and Hawaii, where she was actually born and raised. She is not alone in her sense of social isolation. Millions of Americans are struggling through life with few people that they can trust for personal and professional help. It's a huge disconnect that raises a key barrier to recovery from the social, emotional, and economic fallout of the pandemic. And that's according to a new poll from the Impact Project and also was noted to us. So the Center for Public Affairs Research, the poll finds 18% of U.S. adults or 46 million people say they have just one person or nobody that they can trust for help in their personal lives, such as emergency childcare, a ride to the airport, or support when they fall sick. And 28% say that they just have one person or nobody that can trust to help draft a resume, connect to an employer, or navigate workplace challenges. The isolation is more acute among Black and Hispanic Americans. 38% of Black adults and 35% of Hispanic adults said they had only one or no trusted person to help navigate their work lives. And that's compared with the 26% of white adults. In their personal lives, 30% of Hispanic adults and 25% of Black adults said that they have one or no trusted people. And researchers have long debated the idea that the U.S. has suffered from a decline in social capital or the value derived from personal relationships and civic engagement. And again, I mentioned this before on one of my other stories, to please watch your elders. It has been very rough on them, not being able to get out, socialize. So let's make sure that our elders are okay and taken care of, or your neighbor. All right. Next, in North Carolina, the ban on Down syndrome abortion goes to governor. North Carolina senators approved a bill on Thursday to bar women from getting abortions on the basis of race, sex, or prenatal diagnosis of Down syndrome. When the Senate's party line vote, the prohibition Republicans are seeking now heads to Democratic Governor Roy Cooper, who is likely to veto it, having rejected previous anti-abortion restrictions. Abortion rights group says that the GOP-led bill, which was universally opposed by Senate Democrats and supported by only 6 Democratic House lawmakers, would prevent women from having open conversations with their doctors and deny their constitutional right to an abortion. Abortions on the basis of sex selection are already prohibited in North Carolina. House Bill 453, approved in the Senate by a vote of 27-20, would expand and strengthen the existing law by requiring physicians to report with a signed confirmation that an abortion was not desired due to sex, race, or the likelihood of being born with Down syndrome. But Republican proponents say prenatal tests that confirm the presence of Down syndrome can sometimes be inaccurate, prompting women who wouldn't otherwise do so to terminate their pregnancy. Senator Joyce Krawiec, a Forsyth County Republican, said that the measure prevents discrimination and modern-day eugenics. Children should not have to pass a genetic test to earn the right to be born. The conservative North Carolina Values Coalition supports the bill. Cooper can veto the bill or sign it. The measure will become law if he declines to act within 10 days of receiving it. But even then, it's certain to be challenged in the court. But the bill is not about the joy that people with disabilities bring into the world, Crawford said. The bill is about controlling women, and that's simple as that. The American Civil Liberties of Union North Carolina and Planned Parenthood South Atlantic are urging Cooper to reject the proposal. I'm telling you, everybody wants to tell you what to do with your body these days, especially the government, right? But next, Chauvin's lawyer asked to probe alleged jury bias. The defense attorney for the former Minneapolis police officer convicted of murder in the death of George Floyd is seeking not only a new trial, but also a hearing to impeach the verdict by investigating potential juror misconduct. Eric Nelson's request for a new trial for Derek Chauvin is fairly routine, but the request to investigate the jury is not. Prosecutors have until Wednesday to submit written arguments in response to Nelson's request. It's not clear when the judge will rule. Here's a look at some of the issues Nelson raised. Okay, I want to see. Okay. Chauvin was convicted in April of second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder, and manslaughter in May 25th, 2020. And that's the death of Floyd, yes, a black man, who was pinned to the ground for about 9.5 minutes as he said he couldn't breathe. Chauvin will be sentenced on June 25th. Nelson's request for a new trial covers everything from the extensive publicity of the case to allegations of prosecutorial misconduct, arguing the state belittled him, defends his arguments and his stories. He takes issues with the fact that records weren't made of sidebar discussions between attorneys and the judge. And he says that the court abuses discretion by not allowing a man who was with Floyd on the day he died to testify. He also takes issue with the addition of a third-degree murder charge and with the state's cumulative evidence about the use of force. Nelson alleges all of these factors deprive Chauvin of his right to a fair trial. This is very interesting. It's unlikely that a new trial will be granted since Cahill already ruled on most of these issues. Hunter and other experts said he probably won't overturn himself. Still, expert says that Nelson has to try. He also has to present these issues in the trial court if he wants to raise them on an appeal. Yeah, like they said, he has to try. Well, good luck with that. Next, people are scared as gang activity fuels Portland violence. Police estimate half of Portland's 470 shootings this year, which have injured more than 140 people, are gang-related. Mayor Ted Wheeler warned last month that perpetrators are being told by gangs to shoot someone within 30 days or be shot, and that people are traveling from other states to engage in violence in the Rose City. People are scared, they are angry, they are fed up, said Portland Police Sergeant Ken Dulio. Portland's pervasive gang violence in the 90s, when it was estimated that there were 2,500 people in up to 600 gangs in the area, left a crimson stain on recent city history. But now, following the pandemic shutdown and Floyd's murder paired with a diminishing police presence, community leaders say that the problem has returned. While the number of shootings is comparable to the 90s, police say that the residents also state the boldness of the shooters and amounts of shots fired surpass what they have ever seen before. Gangs are also no longer waiting for the typical tit-for-tat cycle in targeting of a rival, but instead immediately shooting again at places such as Vigils, injuring up to 7 people at a single event. In the past 9 months, the department has experienced a rapid turnover, with more than 120 officers having left the department. Many citing low morale and burnout from nightly racial justice protests that would end in confrontation and plumes of tear gas. During that time, while officers' priorities were shifted to protests, Portland was also experiencing its deadliest year in more than a quarter century. And next, in California, regulators withdraw controversial work mask rules. California's workplace regulators reversed themselves for the second time in the week Wednesday, withdrawing a controversial pending mask regulation, while they consider a rule that more closely aligns with Governor Gavin Newsom's promise. As the state will fully reopen from the pandemic on Tuesday, the California Occupational Safety and Health Standards Board's revised rule, adopted last week after it was initially rejected, would have allowed workers to forego mask only if every employee in a room is fully vaccinated against the virus. What we're going to do is go into a commercial break. Again, you know what you're watching, Millennium TV 24. I am Kim Seabrook. We will be right back with more news. Thank you.
Millennium TV, bridging communities worldwide. We broadcast diverse international content from Europe, Asia, Africa, and now right here in the USA. Watch us via Roku on your smart TV. Submit your own content to 1530entertainmentllc@gmail.com. Download the Millennium TV app from the App Store to stream our shows anywhere, anytime. Millennium TV.
And welcome back to Millennium TV 24. And back, as I was saying, the California Occupational Safety and Health Standards Board revised rule adopted last week after it was initially rejected. It would have allowed workers to forego mask only if every employee in a room is fully vaccinated against the virus. And that contrasts within the state's border plan to do away with virtually all masking and social distancing requirements, for vaccinated people in concert with the latest recommendations from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Withdrawing that worksite rule before it goes into effect allows the board to consider changes at its June 17th meeting and potentially have them go into effect by month's end. The goal of the vote, said Board Chairman David Thomas, is to change the workplace regulation so that it matches up with the CDC and the California Department of Public Health so that we're all on the same page. That's what this is about, so we're not out of step with everyone else. And next, in Arizona, refurbishes gas chamber and push to resume executions. As it aims to resume executions after a 7-year hiatus, Arizona has refurbished its gas chamber, where the nation's last lethal gas execution was carried out more than 2 decades ago, before the U.S. rejected the brutal nature of the deaths. The state has purchased materials to make hydrogen cyanide gas, which was used in some past executions and which Nazis used to kill 865,000 Jews in the camp alone. The secret refurbishment late last year at the prison in Flores, southeast of Phoenix, is drawing criticism as a cruel approach to punishment that is out of touch with modern sensibilities. So whether or not one supports the death penalty as a general matter, this is the general agreement in American society that a gas device as a pesticide and used to eliminate Jews has no place in the administration of criminal justice, and that's quoted by the American Jewish Committee. Correction officials declined to say why they are restarting the gas chamber. However, the move comes as states finds it increasingly difficult to secure lethal injection drugs as manufacturers refuse to supply them. All right. And next in our news, Amazon. This is finance. Let's see. Amazon now says that remote work okay for 2 days a week. Corporate and tech employees at Amazon won't have to work in offices full time after coronavirus restrictions are lifted. The Seattle Times reports the online retail giant said in a company blog post Thursday that those workers can work remotely 2 days a week. In addition, the employees can work remotely from a domestic location for 4 full weeks each year. Amazon Works policy updates follow backlash from some employees to what they interpreted as the expectation they would have to return to the office full-time once the state reopens. Some tech companies had launched recruiting campaigns that seemed targeted in part at Amazon workers' dismay over an end to remote work. Most Amazon employees will start heading back to offices as soon as local jurisdictions fully reopen. July 1st in Washington state, with the majority of workers in offices by autumn. And that's what the company said previously. Amazon has about 75,000 employees in the greater Seattle area. The company's new remote work plan is similar to other large tech companies. Google said last month that it expected roughly 60% of its workforce to come into the office a few days a week and for 20% to work from home full time. Google also gave all employees the option to work remotely full time 4 weeks per year. Facebook and Microsoft have both said most workers can choose to stay remote. Amazon's new policy could add to the challenges faced by Seattle's traditional business core. In the pre-pandemic times, tens of thousands of Amazon workers commuted into the South Lake Union neighborhood, which is north of downtown, every single day. But most have not returned. More than 450 downtown retailers, restaurants, and other street-level business locations have closed permanently in the 16 months since the pandemic sent office workers home. And that was according to a downtown Seattle survey. Of the roughly 175,000 people who worked in downtown offices before the pandemic, 80% continue to work remotely, according to the data. I think if it's not broken, right, why need to fix it? If it's working for a lot of people, I think it's more convenient. Offices don't have to worry about a large electric bill and other things that they have to take care of. Let the people work from home if that's what they want to do. Russia fines Facebook, Telegram over banned content. Russian authorities on Thursday ordered Facebook and the messaging app Telegram to pay steep fines for failing to remove banned content, a move that could be part of growing government efforts to tighten control over social media platforms amid political dissent. A Moscow's court fined Facebook a total of 236,000 and Telegram 139,000. It wasn't immediately clear what type of content the platform failed to take down. It was the second time both companies have been fined in the recent weeks. On May 25th, Facebook was ordered to pay $362,000 for not taking down content deemed unlawful by the Russian authorities. A month ago, Telegram was also ordered to pay $69,000 for not taking down calls to protest. Earlier this year, Russia's state communications watchdog Roskomnadzor started slowing down Twitter and threatened it with a ban, also over its alleged failure to take down unlawful content. Officials maintained the platform failed to remove content encouraging suicide among children and containing information about drugs and child pornography. So it's amazing that they can leave those things on social media, but Trump can't have freedom of speech. And I'm not taking sides as far as the presidents or, any Democratic or Republican party. But what I'm just saying is that there are a lot more things that are placed on social media that need to be taken off or not allowed, and they're not. But next, what do we have? In entertainment, Jeffrey Toobin. He returns to CNN after the Zoom call incident. Do you guys remember that? CNN legal analyst Jeffrey Toobin returned to the network Thursday for the first time in more than 7 months after he was caught masturbating on a Zoom call with former colleagues at The New Yorker. Toobin, in an interview with CNN's Alison Camerota, said that he was grateful to CNN for another chance and that he was trying to become the kind of person that people can trust again. Camerota asked him bluntly, "What the hell were you thinking?" "Obviously, I wasn't thinking very well or very much," he said. Toobin was fired from The New Yorker after working there for 27 years, following an investigation into last October's Zoom call. He said he had no excuse for his conduct, but that he mistakenly thought he was off the camera. Being fired from the magazine was heartbreaking, he said. "I thought this punishment was excessive, but that's why they don't ask the criminal to be the judge in his own case." So he also said he's been in therapy. He's apologized personally to those he let down and has been doing community service at a food bank. He apologized to CNN viewers, and "I've also got a lot to rebuild," he said, "but I feel very privileged and very lucky that I also have the opportunity to do that." Well, we wish him luck, and hopefully he makes sure that camera's off next time. Next, Bronx Street renamed after Stan Lee Way. I didn't notice until just the other day as I was researching, in honor of the comic book legend. This week, New York City's council chose to honor the late Marvel Comics icon Stan Lee in an epic way. Reports show that the lawmakers approved the proposal on Tuesday to name part of a Bronx Street after Lee, who grew up in the borough. No clue, didn't know. Lee was known as the heart and soul of Marvel Comics for nearly 60 years. During his impressive career, he created many of those franchises' most beloved characters, including Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, the Avengers, X-Men, and the Hulk. The late mogul was also an integral part in the movie and television adaptations of his characters. But before he was a legend in the world of comics, Lee was Stanley Martin Lieber, the son of Romanian-born parents. He attended DeWitt Clinton High School right here in the Bronx, where he discovered his love of writing and even won a high school essay competition sponsored by the New York Herald Tribune. So to honor Lee's accomplishments and to recognize the Bronx's influence on his work, University Avenue between Brant Place and West 176th Street will be co-named the Stan Lee Way. I think that's awesome, and I just wanted to highlight that just because you're from the Bronx doesn't mean you can't be somewhere else. You keep pushing, be creative, and get your name on the street in the future. Let's go. Next, we have Eric Velasquez. Unfortunately, was killed when a 16-year-old gang member fired into a crowd. In a Thursday statement regarding Boyle's decision, a spokesman for the State Office of Court Administration said that this defendant is an adolescent offender under the recent raise of age statutes, which in the youth part of Supreme Court requires a presumption against custody. And I don't know what happened. I think that was it. And I'm sorry. I guess I lost the rest of that article. But going back to the Bronx, salute to many blessings to Stan Lee, who was again is going to be honored in the Bronx. And I am Kim Seabrook. We're about to close this out and end the show. And we'll be back with some more news tomorrow, Millennium TV 24. Thank you so much for watching.